Way back in the summer of 2019, Rotor set Jack and I a challenge, and that was to ride their new 1x13 hydraulic road/gravel group set along the 283km Reavers Way in a day.
Following the release of their mountain bike hydraulic group set, they decided we could set ourselves another challenge. And this time it would be a fully off-road mountain bike adventure.
Matthew Vanderpool over here, trying to get as far as we can today. Just like the last challenge, the route will be up to us and we can decide the distance and elevation covered. But this is where things started to get a little tricky. The last route was done in the height of summer, I think it was June, wasn't it? And this route was done in a particularly wet week in the middle of autumn.
The weather was just not playing ball, and that is when dear friend of the channel and dear friend, Tom Ragg, stepped in with a suggestion for a route of truly epic proportions, the Lord of the Loops. Getting quite exciting up there, Joe.
This brutal 105km loop starts in Fairholmes in the Peak District and packs in 4,000 metres of climbing. The route guide confirms this, and I'm going to need my notes here. The Lord of the Loops is big, covering over 100km of gruelingly hilly terrain. An early start, ideally in midsummer, should be deemed essential, and unless you're well fit already, you will need to train.
Safe to say, on paper, this would be a very big challenge for us pair of full-time excuse makers. Our original plan was to ride this epic loop in just one day, but as you will soon find out, that did not go to plan.
Minds and bodies are mushy.
But before we get into that, a little bit about our kit. I was going to be riding a really nice Santa Cruz highball with the aforementioned Rotor hydraulic group set, whereas Jack,
I was on Joe's old Scott scale long-termer, which had the Rotor group set fitted for this video.
However, just like in the last video, with Rotor's group set being modular, we could go slightly different with our gearing choices.
Yes, I'm an absolute legend, so I paired a 32-tooth chainring on Rotor's 2-in-power power crank set with a 10-46 cassette on the back.
Me, not as much of a gear mashing legend, so I had a 10-52 tooth on the back, so a huge spread of gears on the back, and I paired that with a 34-tooth chainring up the front. I also had Rotor's new Inspider power meter and their Capic carbon crank. That is an incredibly light power meter setup. I think it's something like 512 grams. Again, much like the last video, we were also using Q rings, both of us, and we were hoping with those gearing choices we could kind of help each other out throughout the ride.
And while we were confident in the ability of our bikes, we were less confident in the ability of ourselves. We seem to say this in most videos now, but we honestly have not been riding very much recently. And I think leading up to this ride, the longest ride we did was maybe what?
An hour.
2 hours at best, perhaps. So yeah, we knew we were in for a serious challenge on a big day out. So with that all in mind and as much preparation as we could possibly pack in, we set off with bellies full of nutritious treats from the Golden Arches for what we hoped would be an awesome day of riding. Yeah!
So we're here.
We're here.
Wednesday morning? I think then Wednesday morning.
So we thought we'd kick things back off with a 65 mile, 4,500 meters worth of climbing. Big day out on the bikes. Tell me what you've eaten today.
Oh, it's bad. A McDonald's breakfast, a crumpet, an M&M's, and a Neat Natural bar.
Eat
well
elite.
fed. Yeah, eat elite. Would you like some?
Yeah, I would. Thank you.
This is great. The ride began with us cruising around the Lady Bower Reservoir. Really nice, good weather, kind of easy trails, and we were kind of full of good morale at that point.
Full of good morale and well warmed up, we headed to the very first climb of the day, which was morale sucking. It was genuinely really hard to start.
Yeah, a tough start, and I had a few mechanical issues. We always seem to have a few mechanical issues at the start of the day. My headset was a bit loose. Soon sorted that out, and we carried on up to the cut gate section. Always a few teething problems when you first build a bike up. Headset's pretty loose. That's lost us about 10 minutes, hasn't it?
Woo! We'd already been warned by Simon Bounds, who runs a local bike shop, 18 Bikes. This section in winter could be quite boggy and quite challenging. And it was, but it wasn't as bad as we were expecting.
Oh. Oh. You made it! Well done. We hardly walked at all. It's also worth mentioning that they'll soon be fixing that part of the trail, so if you do this trail in the winter, you should find a much easier ride from then on. Hopefully we just negotiated the Bog of Doom, didn't we?
Yeah, it was all right actually.
Wasn't too bad.
Finding my feet again. Dare I say, coming back. Maybe been a while since I've been on a mountain bike.
We smashed through and we came to the first descent of the day where we really opened up the taps and was actually good spirits and having lots of fun.
Good descent.
It was really good actually. It was
Yeah.
really good fun.
I was fairly happy with my gearing choice at this point. How about you?
Yeah, it was fine, you know, I had a wide enough range even with my 32 tooth chainring at front, and on those kind of really fast descents, you know, I wasn't spinning out trying to chase you down. So yeah, all good up to that point.
Then, after a few bits of nice farmland single track, we hit the first difficult section, which was a really long, draggy headwind bit next to a busy road.
Yeah, it wasn't even that steep a climb, but this headwind was really savage up this fire road, and like Joe said, it was definitely a morale-sucking bit through there.
You have history with geese, don't you?
One flew out in front of me, and I went over the bars and broke my elbow. The goose was okay. My elbow was a bit floppy. Bit grippy that last bit. We just had a grim headwind section.
Really hard. Right, fine. Done now. Had a fun descent there.
Got your buff on.
Got my buff on. It's getting a bit chilly on the tops.
Yeah.
But it's not raining. Happy.
Once we're off that difficult bit, we had a little regroup with our videographer, Tom, and then we headed down a really nice kind of disused railway track. That was good fun.
It was really good fun, and it was nice to cover a good bit of ground in quite fast pace, and it was just, you know, nice and smooth, chasing each other down there.
So airy.
Yeah, this was a good point where with me, with the 10-34, I could kind of drag you along a bit. You had a slightly smaller ratio at the top end, so it's good that we were able to help each other out at that point.
Bit of rain.
Morale's a bit lower now, but not too far away from lunch, so we're going to press on and go and get that.
Cafe.
At the end of this railway path was this village called Hadfield, where we were treated to our first feed stop of the day. We're in an alarmingly cheap bakery. We filled our bellies.
We had a full lunch and it cost us £9.
Would not happen in Bristol.
No.
Really good.
Although at this point, I started to realise that we'd only ridden 30 kilometres and it had taken us well over 3 hours, so progress was slow. And we hadn't done that much climbing of that 4,000 metres of climbing, so I started to think, the day's slipping away from us a bit.
And it wasn't as if we'd really gone for that late a start either. The terrain was just so challenging, in a, you know, in a fun, engaging way, but it was really like, it was coming together to be a very, very difficult day out.
Yes, so time was starting to creep up upon us. During the last challenge, it was the height of summer, so we had until 10:30 at night before it got kind of dark and grim. This time it was going to get dark at about 6:30, wasn't it? So I think we were a bit worried about getting the ride done in time.
And to add to that, we could also see a very, very large shower down the valley making its way towards us, which we were almost immediately caught in as soon as we set back off.
Quick ride through the town, and then we were up a steep road climb and back onto the moors. At this point, we were both thankful for the power meters because we were using them to pace ourselves on those longer climbs.
Yeah, it's really easy to overcook yourself on any kind of steep climb, particularly when I'm chasing down young Joe. So it's good to be able to temper those efforts and, more importantly, ride them at our own paces. Before we got to our next stop in Hayfield, we did manage to include quite a few wrong turns, which just made things that little bit more difficult. We actually added quite a lot of climbing and mileage onto it. And at one point we actually had Tom call us saying he could see us on completely the wrong mountain on the other side of the valley. We should add as well, this is in no way the fault of the GPX, it was completely and utterly our ignorance.
What's just happened, Joe?
We went the wrong way for quite a while, didn't we? We were a little bit grumpy now. There's big clouds behind you. It's a headwind. Feel the rain a bit. And to make matters worse, we were caught in a big windy rainstorm kind of on the way back down the hill. We just managed to get down in time, but it was quite funny getting caught out in the rain.
Oh, desperate times, Joe. This is quite sad.
Stuck against the wall, yeah. time slipping away from us a bit, isn't it? I think maybe we're not making fast enough progress to beat the dark. We'll see.
At least we've got good views.
Yeah. You probably can't see on the camera, but it's like sideways rain. And by this time, we had covered 56 kilometres, but it had taken us well over 6 hours. And I think this was the first time when we were sitting against that wall in the rain that I truly believed we weren't going to make it.
At that point, like Joe says, we knew that we weren't going to finish for the day, but that was in some ways a bit of a blessing because it meant we could kind of open up the taps a little bit on the descents and we began stressing less about it. And we were just kind of smashing through these really fun descents, amazing views, and maybe enjoying ourselves a little bit more without the pressure of the full day out.
Progress is slow, but you're still quite happy, aren't you?
Oh, great time. Good views, out with my boy. According to my Garmin, don't know if you can see that, but just back there should have been a bus stop.
Bus stop?
A bus stop. Ready to shred? Now, don't get me wrong, Joe, you and I love mountain biking, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't delighted to be on a road climb for a little while.
Feeling tired now?
Do you think you could huck that quarry?
Like Josh Bender?
His Carpiel.
Yeah. The next couple of hours leading up to dark at around 6 o'clock at night, I can't remember much of it, but what I can remember is the last descent before we finished for the day into Castleton.
Yeah, that was a spicy treat waiting for us at the very end of the day. Now, we'd caught up with videographer Tom, who'd just walked up, and he was like, you know, it's a little bit rocky, a little bit steep, and we felt confident we'd be able to ride it. You know, we do plenty of mountain biking.
Yeah, we looked over the top, looked okay, didn't it?
And immediately after setting off, we realised that we were not on the right bikes for this terrain. It was so steep, big baby head sized kind of rocks all the way down through essentially a river.
And Jack even managed a little crash, which I think I just caught on camera. You may see him just falling into the bush.
You alright? So we kind of decided to swallow our pride a little bit. It was maybe a little bit pushing down the steep bit, which I think is fair. And after that point, we indulged in a bit of caving.
Yeah, Jack found some caves.
Hi, Joe. What did you think to that descent?
Very difficult. beyond my current level of skills.
It's because you need to eat a sandwich, man.
This isn't a leg, that's actually a hockey stick.
And then we wrapped up for the day. And very satisfied after what, how many hours on the bike?
I think around 10 hours out on the bike, kind of between filming and stopping for lunch and waiting for Tom and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a long day. So we got to Castleton, didn't make it all the way.
Certainly did not. We've done, what, 85k?
Something like that. It's taken a long time. We averaged 8.4k an hour for the whole thing, so it's hard going. Good day out though.
Very good day out, really cool route, very challenging, good fun.
Yeah, not for the faint-hearted.
Long time.
As per usual, and this is something we're very guilty of, we hadn't drunk enough in the day. I think I'd had a bottle in 10 hours, which is just not the thing to do. So the first pint made me feel really quite drunk.
Day 2 started with a delicious and nutritious breakfast, then it was back to Castleton to finish the ride.
Morale was high, and we started off by heading up this really cool broken road up to kind of the top of Mam Tor. It's an old asphalted road which has been completely disused, and you've got these cool little drops and jumps going up there, and that was good fun starting that off with the day.
And once again we were using the power meters to keep a lid on our climbing.
So we only did about, what, 600 watts up the whole thing?
Yeah, about 600 watts. Viewers may notice that you're wearing the same top and the same
I've got new
gilet. You do have new tights on.
I have new tights on. I really like this jersey. It was the first time I wore it yesterday. It was really good.
Then we had a really cool traverse around the side of Mam Tor, great views, and there was a really cool descent down into the bottom of the valley.
Yeah, that was quite technical, and I was glad it came at the start of the day because it was probably the most fun descent, I think, of the trip.
Yeah, there was a good bit with some kind of rock slabs that we were going over, passing slowly by the walkers, give them a little wave. Everyone is very friendly up in the hills, so it was good vibes all round.
After we'd finished that descent, we were treated to quite a long climb with a lot of really technical sections, a river crossing, and also, we're not ashamed to say, a bit of hike-a-bike as well. It's a real challenge going up there, but the most upsetting thing of all, Joe,
I almost lost some of my favourite winter red gloves. I dropped one, I was very sad, but luckily I went back and it was waiting for me, stuck up in the rocks.
Thought I'd lost you, Big Red, but we're reunited again.
we then had a really, really rocky descent coming down. It was kind of like surfing on a bike rather than actually riding it for a while.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was difficult. I think I was a bit grumpy at that point. You were really going well down there, yeah.
Getting near to the end now? Yeah, I think about 10k to go. Just came down a really rocky descent.
Quite sketchy.
Quite sketchy.
I find it sketchy.
I was just a legend, powering ahead, but no, had a little bit of food. Got now, what, one big more climb, Joe?
I think two. One, I'm not sure.
But then immediately after, we crossed the road and went up a really steep climb, and then you were having a great time. We were then at the very top of this climb where we immediately just kind of turned back on ourselves to go back to where we'd pretty much just been. So then crossed the road and we had a nice section around Lady Bower Reservoir.
Yeah, this was one of the only long flat sections we'd had on the whole ride over the 2 days, and once again it was really good to kind of make some progress over half an hour of riding to kind of tick off a few kms was really good.
Oh, it's a black hole!
And finally we got to the final climb, which for me started with some hiker bike. You did a little bit better though.
Legend! I did a little bit better up some of the kind of techier stuff. I'm more flexible and lithe than Joe, so I can actually get low on a bike, you know, like a cabbage on the top of a bike.
Yes, and we got up to the top of the moor and we both kind of pressed on because we knew we had maybe 15 minutes more of pressing on before we got to the final descent of the day, which was really cool. We could see Lady Bower Reservoir in the distance and it was a long traverse down a valley, some of the best descending of the 2 days, and we were having a great time.
Yeah, really good fun. A few gates kind of broke up on the way down, probably tempered our over-enthusiastic attitudes. And eventually we had the last steep drop to the reservoir and the last bit back to where we'd started the day before.
And then we finished back at the reservoir, both pretty tired, but very happy, and we had an amazing panini with Video Tom at the calf.
Well done, boys.
So that was our attempt at riding the Lord of the Loops, and Joe has got some stats for you.
Well, over the 2 days we covered a whopping 112.75 kilometres, so definitely some wrong turns in there, a bit more than the 105 kilometres we were supposed to do. We climbed apparently 3,122 metres, so a bit less than the claimed 4,000, but who knows how accurate our Garmin's were in all that wet riding.
Not that it mattered because it felt about like 8,000 metres.
We burnt around 5,000 calories, which equates to a lot of delicious snacks. Our moving time over the 2 days, remember this isn't our kind of moving and faff time, just the moving time, was 9 hours. I think our moving and faff time, a lot more. But we have to get those nice shots for you, so that's why. And finally, our normalised power for the whole 2 days was around 176 watts, which isn't too bad for a couple of part-time excuse makers and soft boys like us.
Now, as you've seen, it was a pretty technical route. What did you think to your choice of bike?
Bike I was very happy with. That Santa Cruz is really good fun. That was the first time I've ridden that bike, so it's always a good sign that the first time you sit on a bike, you do a kind of 10 hours of riding over 2 days, it causes you no issues, so I was very happy with it. My gearing choices and the rotor crank, very happy with those as well. As we said before in the previous video, I like to spin a bit more than Jack, so having that 10 to 52 tooth cassette, that huge range, was really nice. The only slight issue is that the jumps at the top of the cassette are quite big, and that's where a gearing choice like yours with a 10 to 46 would be better.
Yeah, and I was also really happy with mine. Like Joe says, I'm just a little bit more mashy in my gears, and at the top end, you have those slightly smaller jumps and cadence. But it is a modular group set, you can pick and choose, and that's what works for me. A
few thanks before we go any further. The first one goes to Simon Bounds from 18 Bikes. He helped us out a lot with the route, and he is part of some organisations which keep the trails there in great conditions. They are Peak District MTB and Ride Sheffield, as a route passes through both of these areas.
Next up we have Keeper of the Peak, which is a vital resource for kind of checking on trail conditions in that area.
And finally, thanks to Vertibook Graphics, who produced the Dark Peak Trail Book, and that's where you can find out more information about this route.
You can check links for all of those organisations and that book in the video description.
So that was our Lord of the Loops ride. Make no mistake, this is a really tough day out. You want to be well prepared, but if you finish it in a day, that would be an amazing achievement.
Thank you to Rotor, our sponsors, for letting us bag another epic route. And again, if you didn't see our previous video on the Coast to Coast ride, definitely check that one out because it was equally as fun.
If you've got any more routes you'd like to see us try, let us know in the comments. And as always,
do not forget to like and subscribe, and click the little bell icon so every time we upload a video like this, you will get a notification. Bye! Yeah!